We're back, baby. I'm Joshua Fisher, along with Alexander Desopoulos and Nikki Snacks Kreider. This is the Horns Up Talking Texas podcast. So get your horns up, because here we go. Horns Up Talking Texas podcast. New year, same thing. 2 losses. The minute we start covering hoops, it just goes down the crapper. We lose at Iowa State. We really were never had a shot at that one. They pretty much dominated us the whole time. It finished kind of close score-wise, but they pretty much had that in the bag. And then we had Kansas State at home. They take the lead. We retake the lead and then just seemingly can't score a bucket for the last 4 or 5 minutes.
Very 1 point loss, brutal.
Yeah, very similar to the Seton Hall situation where we couldn't close or win at all and put offensive pressure on them. And I'm looking at this team, and in the grand scope of college basketball, Marcus Carr was phenomenal against Kansas State. He had many, many mental lapses against Iowa State. That was the first half against Iowa State was some of the sloppiest basketball I've seen Texas basketball play, period, in my 7-8 years of being a fan and watching them and following them. One game, it's Andrew Jones. Another game, it's Marcus Carr. Timmy Allen's been pretty consistent. Mitchell's been in and out of the lineup. DeSue in and out of the lineup. Ramey had left a lot to be desired last game. He shot pretty poorly. It's just a situation of we haven't fully been on the court, similar to Kansas State, and we really need to figure out our personnel and figure it out fast, because we've headed into the Big 12, and if the Big 12 early play has shown us anything, it is a gauntlet. There is no easy game in the Big 12. This 9-7 Kansas State team, which we were playing at home, we lose to. Kansas obviously can win the whole thing. Baylor spent weeks at number 1. They can win the whole thing, go back to back. Tech is extremely dangerous. We've lost to Iowa State, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, OU. You know, teams that we beat are not too shabby at all in tough games. The Big 12, like we discussed last time on our show, by and large, through and through, may be the best top to bottom conference, Power 5 conference in basketball.
There's not a single team in the Big 12 that has a losing record.
Which is nuts. And rightfully so, because anyone can honestly beat anyone, or at the very worst, give them a tough time and run for their money. I look at college basketball, and it's rare you get, and I love just throw out some references of players we've seen in recent years. It's rare you have a guy like Carson Edwards, who's your best player and also your closer. I mean, that is just a special case scenario. This team does not have a guy yet, at least, who has stepped up and can end the game. Davion Mitchell was the best player on Baylor. I think we could all agree. But Jared Butler ultimately is the guy at the end of the game you want taking the shot and was their closer. We've seen situations for like Villanova where they've had guys who were the best player in their team, quote unquote, but other guys who stepped up and were able to close games and score for them. We just don't have that guy who can take over at the end of the game. And
well, I mean, it's Marcus Carr.
I hope. And is it Marcus?
Sometimes.
Well, that's who had. I mean, he had a good game against Kansas State. So part of the reason why he's taking that last shot is because you're riding the hot hand. But he took that last shot. It hit the rim twice. It was a decent look, step back too. But you basically just want him to go ISO and get some sort of clean look off, and he did, and he just didn't hit it. I think it's less about the last shot of the game and more so, you know, the last 2.5 minutes, like you mentioned, where it was 65-64 for way too long. And they had multiple looks and possessions where they could have gotten to the foul line or gotten an open shot. I mean, the story to me, this game against Kansas State, there were no glaring issues outside of the fact that we didn't shoot the three very well. We're not a great 3-point shooting team. We were shooting 32% across the year from beyond the arc. And I think that a lot of our go-to buckets are mid-range pull-ups or, you know, a guard. We have some pretty big guards and they like to go ISO and they like to post up at the high post and shoot that fadeaway, the turnaround shot. Mm-hmm. But like Mitchell, there's not like a post look to Mitchell. That's not our go-to, right? No. I mean, we just, I felt like against Kansas State where our personnel was clearly better, that they were playing better team basketball, getting better 3-point looks, moving the ball more. It was less ISO basketball. And because of that, they ended up in the right position at the end to knock us off. But that's a game you can't lose at home. You can't lose to a team that's 1-4 in the conference at home.
You see this conference, no way. That's a game you take care of business for. That's incredibly important. And you're right. And maybe that's my issue, where Carr does take the last shot. He does have a good game. And they move the ball well against OU, which is sad. Like, OU,
they look great against OU. I mean, we're just praising them about how well they played, and then they go out and drop 2 in a row.
Yeah, they moved the ball, except the Iowa State game was slop city. I don't know what that was. An unbelievably sloppy game, turnover after turnover. But the Kansas State game, a game you got to win. I mean, the team basketball just wasn't there. And maybe when it was just the last shot didn't seem. It was just janky. It wasn't planned out. It wasn't smooth. The ball moved around a little bit too much to a point where you were unsure if Carr was even going to take the last shot. He had the ball to start. I think it got transferred to Timmy Allen, and then Carr gets the ball back in his hands and takes a decent shot, not a great look. And I just wish that, and it's something that's going to have to come with time because there's a lot of transfers. Carr's a transfer. Mitchell's a transfer. Bishop's a transfer. D'Souza's a transfer. He's been out. Mitchell's been out. And Christian Bishop, I would love to see a little bit more out of him and keep getting him involved. Excuse a transfer. That these guys got to figure out how to play within each other.
They've only played 18 games together. It's under 20 games. I mean, they've got to figure out, how to mold together and play as one unit. But no, you're right. I think right now though, like it's a really critical time of the season, right? To kind of regroup and reassess, what you've done and what you've been able to do to be successful, and what's hurt you. Because these games are getting a lot harder, right? I mean, you're playing against Oklahoma State on Saturday that already beat you this season. Then you got TCU, but then you play against Tennessee, who's also a nice ranked team, right? That's an out of conference game. But then after that, Tech ranked, Iowa State ranked, Kansas ranked, Baylor ranked, OU ain't no slouch, and just doing it all over again. So, I mean, this is always going to be a tough stretch, but I think this is the time right now where you retool and you figure out, what makes this team successful, figure out who your guys are, because if they keep dropping games like this, they're not going to make the tournament.
No, I mean, you can't lose this. I misspoke. We had lost to OK State. We had beaten Kansas State earlier. We played them twice. OK State at home is a must win. This TCU team, again, like the Big 12 is strong. You go to TCU.
You have to wallop them.
And then Tennessee's not an easy game.
No,
that Chandler's good, and Barnes, is coming into his old stomping grounds looking for revenge, and that's a game you got to win at home as well.
Well, let it be a lesson. They play Oklahoma State on Saturday. When the rankings get reset, I expect after this Kansas State loss that we probably won't be ranked.
Shouldn't be.
And we shouldn't be. I agree. And so you got to look at yourself in the locker room, and Beard's got to bring the guys together and be like, look at all the talent. Look at all of you who have transferred here. Look what you're supposed to be able to do. And there's no number by our team right now. And let's change that. And let's win some games. And we have to execute in the first half and in the second half. I thought we played really well in the first half against Kansas State. I felt like we were in control of that game, despite really breaking it open, getting that lead to 10 to 15 points. And that's something that they have to do. Right. And then, of course, in the second half, you have to execute, especially if you're not a 3-point team, right? If you're not a team who's going to fill it up from beyond the arc, you have to be able to execute. You have to limit turnovers. You have to get to the free throw line. You have to be able to get easy buckets, and you got to play lockdown D, because you're going to know that if you're not hitting shots at the end of the game, you have to have a comfortable lead, 8 to 10 points, so that when they hit 2 back-to-back threes, you're still leading. Right. It's a tough way to win in college basketball, because refs let the guys get away with more than they do in the NBA. Sure. Guys, they really armbar a lot. They really get into guys, especially when they get into the paint. Jay Billis has been just all over it this entire year, basically just calling for the refs to actually call fouls when plays are fouls, because guys are getting away with shovies, as you like to say, Josh, when they get into the paint. And you got to be able to get past that. You got to be able to take care of games that are must wins.
It's interesting you bring that up. I think that, letting the boys play a bit more. Younger guys, less experience, not the NBA, one less foul than the NBA, 5 fouls and you're toast Malone on the court. But you bring up a great point. Like, if you cannot live and die by the 3, which is not great, not ideal, but there have been teams that have gotten to the tournament that are not extremely explosive and gone far that are not extremely explosive offensive teams. Like those Tech and Virginia teams like that met in the championship game. Like the Virginia team was better offensively, but that Tech team was not anything to write home about offensively. It wasn't like a Villanova barn burner type team where they can run and go 90 on you. One of these Gonzaga teams
they're just freak athletes on that team. I think
freak athletes and sound basketball and play defensively
and a great coach.
And yeah, right. And a great coach. I mean, look, get to the line, foul some guys out, and get physical. I don't mind that brand of basketball at all. But to go devil's advocate to your earlier point, Nick, they have only played 18 games together, but we don't have time. Like time is of the essence, unfortunately. In
exactly.
College sports,
and that's what I'm saying. This big chunk of season is really important. I mean, every game is important, of course, but like the middle chunk where like it's time to really kind of just take a step back and figure out what's working, what's not working to reassess. I mean, that's crucial.
Yeah, I mean, look, you read off the schedule a bit before. You went 3 in a row, and against OK State at TCU and a great Tennessee opponent in the SEC, and then you get to Tech and you somehow get one at Tech, which I think this Tech team is still really good. It's a scary team. That O'Banner transfer is a nice transfer.
You want to hope, but you want to hope that by the time you get to Tech, where once you get to Tech, you're getting 4 ranked games in a row against good teams. You want to hope that you're 3-0 heading into that game.
Please. I mean, look, if you win that, yeah. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah, it's a great situation.
Of course, one game at a time.
Yeah, one game at a time. But we can take the macro approach and look at the rest of the season, of course. And
here's the thing:
there's 13 games left.
Here's the thing: it's good for us to take the macro approach because I want the team to take the macro approach. But as a fan base, like, we want to look at the big picture. We want to think about, what the hypotheticals are, like, what the situations are going to look like in a month from now. I mean, that's just kind of how fans are. But if you, as a fan, the listeners out there, I mean, I'm sure sometimes you come to this podcast to listen about, the negatives and sometimes, sulk in your sorrows with us because Texas had a string of bad luck, but there's also a lot of great things happening right now with Texas, right?
Yeah.
Moving on. The baseball team is ranked number 1 in the preseason rankings. I mean, that is something that is huge, right? Yeah. I mean, an organization, a team that has always been really, really strong, is just going to kind of put their staple on college baseball this season, I think. And it'll be a fun one. I mean, it's time for one of the teams to really step it up and bring Texas back, whether that's in basketball, football, or baseball, some of the women's sports. We need a true national champion.
Yes, true. And I think college baseball weirdly has been on the rise, much more of a slow burn than a lot of the, the college sports. I mean, we like to compare baseball, basketball, and football from a men's standpoint and look at that lens. And the NBA to college basketball, obviously professional sports are a bit bigger, but the margin from NFL to college football is not that big. From NBA to college basketball is a little bigger, but still not that big. But MLB to college baseball is still massive. Like baseball is still professional baseball is still much more widely appreciated than college baseball. And that's a lot to do with high school players, going
in some areas. I do think in the South, college baseball is very popular, like in Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee,
Nebraska, Arkansas. These understandable, but I think
programs are good, basically.
Yeah, I Arkansas is a great one to throw out there, Nick. I think that this is a time where baseball is rising, and I would love for our team to capitalize. It's great that we're ranked number 1. It's great that we discussed Gary Patterson coming in. He was at the basketball game in Longhorn gear. Now he's going to be a Longhorn and work with our defense. A guy who has beaten us and is a defensive whiz many times and is a good recruiter.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for us. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings on it just because, he was the old enemy, but man, the guy has been able to pull in some big time recruits his entire career, right? TCU is not that blue blood program that we are. Now that he has a blue blood like us, imagine what he can do for us. I mean, I'm pumped to have him. I mean, he's always been a great, mind in college football, and he's had our number many years. So I'm glad that he's on our staff now. And I'm really excited about all the transfers happening. I mean, there's definitely a lot of guys that are still out there that are waiting to commit on the high school level, but also in the transfer level, because transfer portal just doesn't sleep. I mean, it's just bananas 24/7. And we really reap the benefits on Jaleel Billingsley out of Alabama, the tight end. I mean, he's going to look good in burnt orange and white. Billingsley, party at Taylor's house tonight.
Yeah, there you go. It's unfortunate that Drew Sanders looks like he's going to
He went to Arkansas. Yeah.
Arkansas. But hey, again, like, look, kudos to Arkansas. They're building something out there. But having Gary Patterson in the mix and in the fold, he's a head coach at TCU 20 plus years. Like, the guy was there from 2000 to 2021, pretty much as long as we've been able to watch college football. Extremely experienced. He's a winner in bowl games, overall winner. And he's a coach of the year. He was won coach of the year twice, AP coach of the year twice. So again, I think it's a good
coach
guy.
A lot of pros too.
100%.
If you think guys don't, care about that, he's going to have an instrumental part of recruiting and bringing these guys to the next level. I mean, you just look at the guys that came out of TCU that are now in the NFL. I mean, there's a good amount of them.
Yeah. And we talk about holding the coaching staffs to how we hold the players similarly. Like, I love PK, and I don't love PK. I love the idea of giving PK another chance. Let me say that. I love the idea of giving PK another chance. But light a fire under his ass. I'm sorry. If we're like, okay, let's get as many recruits as possible to light fires under the guys ahead of them's ass and let them know it's next man up. Like, sorry. Like, if Gary Patterson, so be it. This isn't like hold hands time anymore. Like, this has gone on long enough. And in the college basketball program, I love what Beard's been doing, to circle back to them, of trying to build the fan base and invigorate the fan base, and, involving them with Hawaiian shirt guy, too loud guy, and like inviting fans and stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But there comes a time where at the end of the day, all that matters is winning. You got to be able to win. Gary Patterson just gives us a better chance to win on the defensive side of the football. Bottom line.
Yeah. Couple other things to note.
Please.
Nick, you mentioned the preseason rank for the baseball team. Number 1, the women's softball team preseason top 10. They're number 9.
Love it.
Women's tennis right now is number 1. Men's tennis, I think, is number 3, maybe number 4. So as always, the other sports at the University of Texas are competing at a high caliber level, at a championship level. So hopefully that will bleed into, the rest of the athletics department, football team, basketball team. Last thing I'll say about the basketball team, there's 13 games left. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to win the Big 12 tournament to make it to the NCAA tournament, to make it to March Madness.
No.
Put yourself in a position where you've won enough games where you're locked into the NCAA tournament. That way you don't have to win. I mean, imagine what that's like. The pressure of having to win out in the Big 12 tournament and in March Madness. That's tough. It's too much pressure.
I'm going to put my head in the damn toilet if that's the case. I swear to God. I'm so angry. And I know it'll come down to that Kansas State game. Women's basketball beat Iowa State. We're recording Wednesday night. Women's basketball beat number 7 Iowa State. They're number 13, I believe, or 15. Sorry. So again, like you were saying, Toss, every other program's taking care of business, but you don't want to be in a position. If we're in a position where you have to win the Big 12 tournament to get into the thing, like at this point, like just I'm gonna get a buzz cut and get a ranch in Montana and just call it a day.
Doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, shout out to Quan. We didn't give Quan a shout out at the top of the show. We miss him. Quan's on vacay. It's 3 of us talking today.
He's in Florida.
We'll have him back next week. Hopefully, have a good guest in there for you guys to chop it up on some stuff.
Hopefully, we have some more transfers coming in. The transfer portal. I mean, we've got a couple of guys that are crystal ball to us right now. Uchon Mathis at TCU. I mean, that kind of seems a little bit too good right now. I mean, it seems like Gary Patterson comes in and he brings in one of his guys. Then there's Jalen Moody as well, who's still out there from Bama. So those are some guys on the defensive side of the ball to look after. And don't be surprised if they add another receiver as well. I don't know where that's going to come from, but they need help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems like a D-Jack Hobbs for the TCU guys. So we love to see that. And we're also brought to you by betonline.ag. Go to betonline.ag today. Place money down, win big, win money. We love to see you do it. Fans out there, I'm Joshua Fish along with Alexander Desopoulos and Nicholas Snacks Kreider. Shout out to Quan Cosby. Get your horns up. We're the Talking Texas podcast. Hook 'em. We'll see you next time.